Hello everybody, Riot Mort here with the patch 1025 patch rundown. We did it! The last patch of 2020, the first full year of TFT. What a year. Yeah, so patch 1025, last patch of the year. By the way, Static would normally join me. He's on vacation this week, getting some well-deserved rest. So you're just stuck with me today. So, we just came off big patch 1024. The patch was crazy, did a bunch of system changes, big stuff. So, what do we have in store for patch 1025? The answer is a lot of nickel and dimes. The goal for this patch was simply to try to nudge a few things in the right direction, very light touches all around, mostly up with a few downs to try to get things to where more things are playable, a little bit better balance, but really no dramatic changes here. This should not be like reinvention of the meta. After the patch, everything that was working should still be working. Maybe a few new things emerge as well. So let's jump into it. All right, first off, as I mentioned in the patch postmortem, what we had, the level 7 changes for base changes was the only thing that felt a little off. Sometimes you're struggling with health, you need to roll down at 7, and it felt really hard to pull back a comeback. So we're just going to nudge this up just a little bit. We still don't want you definitely hitting like every 2-star 4 cost you can at this level, but we want you to be able to hit some. You know, if you're willing to play the shop and play what you hit, you'll get something here. So we're bumping it up 2%, pulling that out of 1 cost. Very light change. It's the only thing, again, all this should make happen is if you're stuck doing a level 7 roll down, shouldn't be as painful. The other system change is something we've had in TFT for a long time, was basically if you get into the situation where your bench is full and you grab a carousel unit, you could kind of cheat the game and have an extra unit, which wasn't the end of the world. But what was for us was like all the bugs that came with it, where it was like once combat started, and then you had all these units in the bench. If you tried to do anything on the bench, like it would pull units off during combat. It just created a lot of bad bugs. So this is a change that's been a long time coming. That now that we can do the UI and actually explain, like, yo, careful, this thing's going to get sold if you don't do anything, we feel comfortable making this change so that now you can't cheat in the unit. Now there's a whole bunch of bugs that'll be gone out of the system. And this just is a generally positive change. 99.99% of people weren't using this really anyway. So this is just good for the game. Long time coming. Happy to see this. Team did a good job getting this in. So, cool. All right, on the balance side, on the traits, we are seeing Divine do a little too well. Not just Warwick. We've also seen some Jax comps emerge, where you 3-star Jax, 3-star Janna, do some pretty good stuff. It's just a little bit too good, so we're just nudging it literally the bare minimum we can here, going from 50% to 45% for its DR and bonus true damage. Very slight nudge. Elderwood. Elderwood 3 and 6 have struggled a bit, especially in the late game where their combats are pretty explosive. And to be frank, this isn't going to change a lot of that. But 3 Elderwood in particular was basically not a real comp. You almost had to like bounce into 6 or don't play it at all. So we're just nudging up the armor and MR per stack just a little bit, 5 each. So you go from 75 to 100 fully stacked at 3, and you go from 125 to 150 fully stacked at 6. Small change, shouldn't change a bunch, but should make Elderwood feel just a little bit better. 6 mage, similar thing. A lot of people playing 3 mage. 3 mage is pretty popular. A lot of people playing 1 mage. Not as many people playing 6 mage. So we're just giving 6 mage a little love, bumping it up to 120 here, so you should hopefully be able to, if you're willing to do the risky 6 mage comps, should pay off. And then Vanguard. Vanguard, from our data, looked like the worst trait in the game by a significant margin, and this is ignoring the Yone problem. It's been like this for a while, but we've been hesitant to act on it. So we're finally acting on it and giving it a slight nudge. So 20 armor at 2, 50 armor at 4, and then 6 plus was basically never played. So we're actually trying to incentivize that a little more, so you can have some crazy numbers here. 750, 2,000. So if you're running 8 Vanguard, that's 2,000 armor. Last Whisper, which we'll talk about, still only drops it to like 400, 500, so you'll still have a lot of armor. Hopefully this makes Vanguards a little bit more playable. So, and again, as you're seeing, a lot of nudges this patch. Okay, on the 1 cost, a lot of changes, but again, all very nudges. Diana and Lysandra, going to talk about them. Their 4 costs are still overperforming for where we want them to be and how easy they are to get, especially with Chosen. So they're getting just the slightest nudge. 50 damage off Lysandra at 3 and 4, and 1 orb less at 4 for Diana. Just 1 orb less. She'll still be good. Both of these champions will still be good, just a tiny bit less. Fiora is probably the biggest nudge this patch. Fiora is basically been the worst champ in the game for a while now. Probably the one Chosen you get in your shop. Doesn't matter, Enlightened or Duelist. You're like, no, don't want that. So we're going to give her some good love here. Again, this is big. She's getting 10 mana off her spell, so she can parry more often. And that spell's going to hit quite a bit harder, like 25% harder almost. So this should open up some crazy builds where you like run 3-star Fiora and make her tanky with Gunblades and Hodges. You might actually take her as a Chosen now. She might be a little stronger. So hopefully we see some more Fiora play. Maokai, kind of similar. He's okay on like stage 2 and then falls off a cliff. His 20 magic resist in particular made him way too fragile for a frontliner. So we're just bumping up his tank stats to make him actually feel like the frontliner he's supposed to be. So he gains 5 armor, 10 magic resist. Pretty straightforward. And then lastly is Wukong. Wukong is another champion that kind of struggled to find his identity after Bonky Kong got removed with the poor Divine rework. I always feel bad for Bonky Kong. That comp should have lived longer. So we're just buffing his spell AD ratio. So if you choose to itemize him a bit, should hit a little harder. Willing to do that to maybe carry the early game, maybe get a Vanguard Wukong Chosen. You can actually run that a bit in the early game a little bit more. Use him to carry maybe your Ash items, things like that. So give that a try. Again, slight nudges. On the 2-cost side, let's talk about Aphelios. So as of Wednesday, Aphelios is on the rise. Who knows, maybe by the time you're watching it, he's dominating the meta. We found a pretty bad bug with Aphelios, which was that his turrets were not firing Hunter like they're supposed to. That's a lot of power. So we fixed that bug, but that would probably make Aphelios the best champ in the game. So we're preemptively pulling 5 AD out of him to make sure that that doesn't happen. He should still be good. He should still be great. And especially now that he's, shooting 2-3 extra Hunter procs, I imagine he's going to be very good early game. But again, didn't want him to get out of control. Hecarim is a champ that struggled to really find his identity. So again, just nudging him. He gets to cast a spell just a little more often. A Chosen Hecarim with some tank items might stay alive a lot longer now. Seems good. Jarvan we talked about in the post-mortem. Jarvan was an overbuff. So we're going to give Jarvan, go back to 50 out of 100. Still be a good champion. Should be fine. Slight nudge to Warlord and Keeper, both of which can use the nudge as well. Sylas. This is probably the most controversial one, but it's not that crazy. 5 Moonlight in particular hasn't really found its footing. And even 3 Moonlight, you usually are using Diana and Lysandra, much less Sylas. Or if you're using Sylas, you're never really excited to 4-star your Sylas. We want 4-star Sylas to actually be something you'll consider, especially in 5 Moonlight. Like if you're playing a 5 Moonlight comp, you're probably itemizing either Aphelios and Sylas, or you're itemizing like Lysandra and Sylas. So Sylas at 4-star, we want to hit like a truck. So he's getting 100 spell damage buff at 3 and 4-star. I actually think there's going to be a pretty cool build where you run like Bramble, Dragonclaw, Gunblade, or throw a Death Cap in there, and like Sylas is going to hit like a truck. This should enable some 5 Moonlight builds if you're willing to risk it, which we're already doing strong if you high rolled them. So we'll be interested to see how this plays out. Vi, this change is less about buffing Vi. We expect this to be power neutral. But what we're doing with our penetration system, this is the first step in us cleaning up our debuff system. So now, basically, for both armor and magic resist, there are 3 levels: small, medium, large. Small is 40%. This is things like Ionic Spark, Vi level 1, things like that. Medium, this is things like Vi level 2, Yone. And then large, things like Vi level 3 and Last Whisper. So all the debuffs will be in one of those categories, and so this is us trying to make sure they all fit those same numbers, 40, 60, 80. And we'll be doing this to a lot more debuffs in the future, but we wanted to try this out with penetration first. So Vi goes to 40, 60, 80. To compensate for that, we're taking 10 off her spell. She also just hasn't really been that successful as a carry. Having 10 less mana might help. Maybe there's an IE Jeweled Gauntlet Gunblade build, or an RFC double Jeweled Gauntlet build now. So hopefully you can have some fun with that. On the 3-cost side, Evelyn. So Evelyn had this issue where at 1 star, especially early game, let's say you got her out of a box and you're running her at 2-1, kind of OP, just like kind of ridiculous. At 2 star, kind of starts to fall off, and at 3 star, meh, okay. But she's also very feast or famine, right? If she casts her spell and she doesn't execute, very little damage. You don't get much healing for like a Gunblade build. But if you do get that execute, a lot of damage. So what we're doing here is trying to nerf 1 star and keep 2 and 3 star about power neutral to slightly better because more consistent. So let me explain. The execute damage is going down from 3 to 2.5x. So when you get the execute, it is smaller, but the base damage for 2 and 3 star is going up to compensate. So at 1 star, if you didn't execute, it's the same. And if you did execute, it's worse. Okay. At 2 star, if you didn't execute, it's better. And if you did execute, it's the same. So it's like kind of power neutral to better if you can get some more health if you need. And 3 star is similar. So again, TLDR, Evelyn a little worse at 1 star, about the same at 2 and 3. So Callista, okay, holy shit. So big shout out to one of our newer designers, Kent, who worked on the team, got into the code, really dug in there, put the time in, and he made Callista work with items. He made Callista work with shields. He made Callista work with a lot of things. So Callista will now properly consider things like Divine. She will now properly consider shields. She will now properly benefit from things like Giant Slayer, Hand of Justice. She got better for that very reason. To compensate, we had to lower her attack speed because she's just more powerful now. So her attack speed gets lowered, but now she can use all these items. The one thing she can't use to call out is spell crit. Her spell, like, it can crit, but it won't calculate it properly. So she's still not a very good user of Jeweled Gauntlet. Just throwing that out there. There's a whole logical reason I can go into why that's the case. But TLDR, don't use Jeweled Gauntlet. But other items are now actually pretty good on Callista. I think Hand of Justice is going to be really good on this champion. All right, Lux. Y'all been asking for it, so we're going to give it to you. Lux, a lot of people really didn't like Lux Chosen as mana, because what happened is she would auto and then cast her spell before the Divine proc and not get the true damage. So we fixed that. Her Chosen stat is now AP. So if you get a Chosen Lux, she will cast right as she procs Divine, and it'll be 30% better. So this should be, if players are right, this is a buff to Lux. So we'll see. I mostly agree, but there you go. We listen. Xin Zhao, this is probably his last chance at redemption. We're giving him another 0.05 attack speed, so he's not necessarily reliant on Duelist. Maybe he can get away with Tool Duelist. And we're buffing his spell damage at 1 and 2 star. So it doesn't feel like you need to hit 3 star. So slight buffs, kind of a nudge, but again, probably the last nudge he's ever going to get. So, and then finally Yumi. This one's interesting because this is another one of those cases where player perception versus reality. But in our data, she looked really bad. So, just a slight nudge. Keep her alive a little longer. Have some HP, Yumi. Should be good. On the 4-cost side, as I mentioned, Talon kind of fell off a cliff. Was the correct thing to do. Now it's time to bring him back up a bit. Keep in mind, he doesn't get resets anymore. He's still vulnerable when leaping. So we gave him a little bit of HP to stay alive a little longer, and his spell gets to hit a little harder. But again, what this means is his spell hits hard, he jumps to the next target, then still has to build mana to be able to do it again. So he should still be a more fair champion. Hopefully this gets him up to playable. Good times. And then lastly, on the 4-cost, Warwick. Again, very slight nudge, but he was gaining a lot of health. That 50% lifesteal, in combined with the 50% DR, was giving him a lot of effective health. Just a little more than we're comfortable with. So we're going to nudge that down to 40%. Basically, it's like he gets a free Bloodthirster. Should be pretty good. Should feel a little bit more fair. That plus the Divine should put him back into fair, nice and balanced. Should still be very good. I do not expect Warwick to disappear from the meta from this. So, on the 5-cost side, Kayn, specifically Kayn 2 especially, but that's mostly because Kayn 1 has to charge up and get his forms, overperforming just a little bit. So again, smallest of possible nudges, taking 25 off his spell at 1 and 2 star. I imagine Kayn is still good. Cool. And Set. Okay, again, shout out to Kent, who's really putting in extra time to make sure some of these bugs and quality of life stuff get in. Showstopper will no longer fail if something happens to Set's targets. Great examples of this is like he goes to grab Yone right as Yone casts, and the spell just dissolves. Or Set trying to grab another Set, spell fails. So now what happens is he'll try to grab the target, they'll leave, but he'll still do Showstopper, still dealing the secondary AoE damage to everyone based on what he was trying to grab's health. But the primary target will continue to be unaffected, as they should. This should lead to him getting to do more of his AoE spells, not bugging out as much. This should be a positive thing for the game. Let us know what you think. Cool. That's it for 5s. Next up, items. Only one item change, and we already talked about it a bit. Part of the armor penetration is set up for the debuffs. Last Whisper gets to be a high-powered armor penetration debuff. So it goes up to 80%. This also works well with the Vanguard buff. So Vanguards get to be strong, but you still have countermeasures to deal with them. So, cool. And then on the bug side, the camera will now reset zoom level to whenever the player changes views. Sweet. Galio can no longer be powered up by Zeke's Locket, Chalice, and other things. Zephyr will not try to hit Galio, things like that, so we fixed those Galio issues. Fixed an issue where Lyssandra's hair would stick out like the side of her head like a baguette. If you forgot what Lysandra used to look like, that should be fixed now. Fixed a bug where Runon's Hurricane could fail to shoot at enemies that were extremely far away. We thought we gave it infinite range. What we actually gave it was like 7 hex range. Turns out 7 isn't infinite, so that should be fixed. Fixed a bug where Callista would reapply spell power to her execute, which resulted in overkill damage. It just made her number look bigger than it actually was, so that's fixed. Fixed an issue where Warwick's Hunter proc would delay his next attack at high attack speeds. So if you've ever been worried about running Hunter with Warwick, fear no more. You can run Hunter with Warwick. It won't slow his DPS now. Sweet. And lastly, fixed a bug where Warwick was not triggering on attack effects like Rageblade and Shiv on his Hunter attacks. Realistically, not that many people running Rageblade Warwick, but Shiv Warwick actually gets a small buff if you're willing to run 2-3 Hunter with Shiv Warwick. So, alright, and that's going to do it. So as you can see, the patch overall is basically nudges to try to make a few things better, a few things a tiny bit worse. Nothing too crazy here. Trying to keep it the same. Should feel pretty good. This is the last patch of the year. This patch goes live, I believe it is December 16th. There will not be a B patch. Let me be clear on that. There will not be a B patch. This patch goes live December 9th. So I guess there could be a B patch if there was an emergency. Never mind. Take it all back. I'm an idiot. This is what happens when I'm recording this at way too late o'clock. So if something goes wrong, there's still time to save it. But yeah, after December 16th, then it's the holiday break. We ain't touching the game during the holiday break. So hopefully the game is in a good state so everyone can go on holiday, have fun, enjoy your holidays, play TFT, things like that. And when we come back in the new year, it'll be patch 11.1, which will be the last patch of set 4 before 4.5, and 4.5 will be on PBE, so that'll be pretty crazy. So, all right, on behalf of everyone on the TFT team, thank you as always for playing and giving us your honest feedback. Appreciate all of you. That's going to do it for this time. Until next time, take it easy.